broken and alone. I feel the rain crashing down all around this empty town. I'm searching for the lost and found, but you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air like a blazing flare. Just stare, cause the flames will burn us. I thought you were the one for me, that's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world.
Welcome to another episode of Unashamed. The whole goal of this is to preach the gospel all over the world to anyone that can hear, for people that we will never actually meet in person. On today's episode, we have Amber Holt.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about how to overcome loneliness. And what gave me a lot of this idea was I did another episode, I think it's 3 or something, testimonies. And that's one of the things you talked about was loneliness.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to a buddy at work, and he was talking about, how he sometimes feels lonely. And I was at my house, spending time with God, and those two things just kind of linked in my brain. I was like, oh man, I need to get Amber on the podcast to talk about how to overcome the season of loneliness and what tools and stuff you can use to do that.
Right.
So, if you want to start with kind of what was your season of loneliness and how did you feel in that?
Okay, so I think what made it such a hard season was because there was a bunch of different things going on. My husband Trevor and I, we'd been married almost 5 years. I think was probably at the depth of where I just kind of felt it was going into our round 5 years. I think when we lived in Oklahoma, he was just involved in some stuff that had really hurt me, and so I kind of harbored some of that. And then we had kids, and then he was always off doing stuff with people, and none of it was necessarily bad things. It's just I was just in a place. Then we moved here to Missouri, and in that transition, I left everything that I'd ever known because I lived in Oklahoma my entire life. And at that time, I was in a daycare with my mom, and so I was with my mom all the time, and so I always had her there, and so I was leaving everything that I knew, everything that was comfortable to me, with my young kids who I struggled with anyway. And so when we moved up here, then he was then in a job. Thankfully that he was in a job, but at the time I didn't see the season that way. But he was in a job that he worked all the time, and then he moved to and he did in Oklahoma too. He worked at a prison as a correctional officer, and so it was like one of those businesses that didn't shut down. So if you were there and you got snowed in, you were just there, and then I was just at home by myself. And so I kind of started harboring some of those things towards him and stuff like that, because I was always dealing with the kids, and it was already a hard season. We had one, and then our two oldest are only 15 months apart, and so I felt like I was just in the brunt of that. And as a mom, I just was not in a really good place at that point. But like I said, then I had my mom, but then we moved to Missouri, and then he was working construction, but then, it was late all the time, and then we were involved in church stuff, and then he was always doing that stuff, which, again, those things are not bad, but it left me in a place. And then he went to work for another business that didn't shut down, and he was gone 24/7. And then we moved on campus, and then he was gone 24/7. And so they accepted that of him. And in some aspects, I could see that now our life has shifted dramatically. But so that's kind of how I think I ended up in this season. It's just I took everything very against me, and that I was left to do the brunt of all of the homework and like the work that home, not homework. Anyway, that kind of work, and that all fell on me, but I was by myself. So regardless of how many people we had around, I was by myself. I was more, and still kind of am, I guess in reference to hosting as the Martha that made sure everything was together. And I kind of took resentment to those things in some ways, but a lot of that I put on myself. And it wasn't that it was anybody's expectations or anything like that. So I think when I got into that season, it was a lot of because I didn't tell people that I was hurting or that I felt like I was overwhelmed. I learned to just grit my teeth and go. And then I found myself into this place where I felt like I was alone all the time. There was nobody there. Even in a room full of people, there was nobody there for me. I probably will end up crying because I already feel it. And we're not even talking about anything. But sorry. I will probably, if you ever have me on anything, I cry. So, but not because I'm sad. I'm not sad. But anyway, and so I think I found myself in that because I took on things that I wasn't supposed to take on, but I also never trusted anybody to tell them that I was hurting or that I needed help because I wasn't raised that way. We're strong people. We do it when nobody else wants to do it. And I still don't disagree with that. I still live my life that way. We're strong people. We carry things and things like that. I've just learned to lean on the Lord a lot more and, be realistic with life. We are very busy people, and so you can only take on what you can take on. And but I think during that season, I think the reason it was so hard is because I took on a lot of offenses from everybody that didn't even know that I was taking on offenses from them because they were not doing anything incorrect. I just took everything as it was an attack against me, and so I kind of more isolated myself. Not in person because we were, again, doing a lot of things with a lot of people. So I was there in person, but actually being there or being open with anybody, I was very not that. I didn't trust people to be open with them because I feel like so many people had failed me. Or if I did say something, they would twist everything that I said. So I learned to not say anything, not to be anything. I'm here. I will give you what you need. But that was but then nobody was giving me what I needed. Again, not necessarily any fault of their own, but that's how I felt. So I just felt like I was alone all the time. I had my kids; they were there 24/7, so I really wasn't alone. But it was just that feeling of being rejected by everybody, even when they were sitting with you. And so
it sounds like Trevor was so busy. Whether he picked up too many things he shouldn't have picked up or whatever, just life sometimes is hectic.
100% life. It is.
Yeah.
And I look back at that season sometimes and I'm like, yeah, I was just immature too. Some of it was that I was just a young mom that didn't know what she was doing, moving away from her mom. So I didn't feel like I had her. And there was a lot of different things that played into that. But it was just where I found myself.
What point from you guys starting to have kids to moving to Missouri did you realize, was there a turning point in your brain where you said, man, I'm starting to feel like a different type of alone? Like before it was just busy, but now it's kind of manifesting into this thing that I just keep going down this whole.
Yeah, I think that, to be honest, I'm trying to think. I really struggled with that for a very, very, very long time. And still, I think sometimes that tries to kind of come back in. Not, again, no fault of anyone else's, but the enemy knows that he can use that against me pretty easily. Because it's easy for me to be like, I'm so busy and no one's here for me. I'm doing all these things for everybody because I'm a doer 100%.
Oh, yeah, you and Trevor do a lot.
A lot. Yeah. To my own detriment. It's not anybody else's fault. But so I think that there's still sometimes that I can kind of struggle down that, like kind of turn that way. But an exact turning point, probably, I'm gonna say that I felt that I was like, oh, this is more than that. I think probably when we were going through our miscarriages, I think was probably the time that I was like, okay, it's more than me just being being ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
I feel like that there's
An actual
more.
something hit me.
Yeah.
I think I'll tell you
I'm
what,
sorry.
you're gonna cry, you're gonna make me cry. This whole episode is gonna be crying. But I think it's important to address whatever the specific thing is, because there are people out there that are dealing with loneliness, and they can't, some people think it's just such a blur that they can't pinpoint it, because like you said, you lived in that state for so long that it's like sometimes just it's chaos.
Yeah. And you kind of learn to deal with it.
Yeah.
And kind of like just shove it down. I was actually talking to our pastor the other day about that. I was like, even when you get offended with people, that we don't need to, you need to address those things pretty quickly, because what happen is you just kind of push it down and you kind of like forget about it. You think you do anyway. You're like, okay, I'm fine, and I can still work with that person and do all of the things until they do something stupid again to you in your mind, and then you're like, exactly, because you didn't ever deal with the thing. So I think that it's easy for us to just kind of get used to living that way without dealing with it for a while, but then it always comes to a head, and that's where I think that probably was one of the biggest things is during that time.
Yeah, loneliness is so weird because you can be in a group and feel like you're the only one in there.
Yeah.
And, I kind of hit this a little bit with my dad, but when I was in the church, I got to such a point where I was lonely that I would show up to church, and it's like I would fade back into this small person, and everyone else was just moving on with their life and just going forward. And then, the next steps I took was I decided to leave. I decided to be like, you know what, I don't care anymore. I'm done playing how I feel. Was there ever a point that you just got to the point where you're like, I'm done just trying to help people? Like I'm just fed up at this point, and I'm done, trying to please everyone.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to ask Trevor how many times I've said that out loud to him. Because I think it's been a ton. I'm like, I just don't want to do any of this anymore. This is all dumb. Like, I'm so over it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Have I come to a point where that's reality? No. I think that he took me through that season of being alone so that I could learn to trust him, even because he knew that I would feel so over people sometimes, because his heart is people, for people, his heart is love. And so I think he knew that I would try and carry so much sometimes that I would start resenting people. So I think he took me through a season, because I feel like for a long time I was in a season where he just hid me. And I think that that's why I felt alone to a certain degree, because he hid me to where I could find out who I was in him and what he needed me to be. And I think at first I didn't like that season because I felt alone. But when I realized it was the season that he was shaping me and molding me, and he's the one that had me hidden, I would like to sometimes go back to just being hidden and not feeling alone. I don't wish that on anybody. That's not a fun place to be. But knowing that he had me no matter what, when I realized that season became less of a burden, and I didn't feel alone because I knew that he was shaping me into something.
Yeah, and I believe that's the difference between doing it with God and doing it without God. And the reason why I wanted to get like kind of in depth, we don't have to get too in depth with your story and how you kind of overcame these things, is because I did kind of my path on it without God, and you did yours with God. And so you still had these ups, down, all these valleys and stuff like that. But was there ever a point that you just got to the point where you're just like, this is way more than I could ever bear, no one's coming to save me? Or was it always kind of like you would be devastated, but you knew in your heart somewhere, you're like, man, I know God's going to come there somehow? What kind of was the aspect of the low?
I think I'm a very big rule follower. So it actually is really hard for me on some things because I'm just like, I can't do those things because I know that it's against the word. Mm-hmm. So feeling lonely and without people, that's not what he intended. So even in my low of wanting to walk away from it, I know I can't walk away from anything because it would devastate me for one, but then it would devastate my family and anybody else that was supposed to be touched by the things of God. So I also was raised that you just suck it up and you just go through it, which in some ways was good. I had wonderful parents. I'm not nothing. Even our pastors, they're my aunt and uncle, and I think for a long time they were you just suck it up and move on, like you just do. So I just learned to bear some of those things. But also I think that there's good in those things too. But so for me, I don't think walking away was really, though an option. It comes out of my mouth that, I'm so over this and so done. I don't think that there really ever was the option because I knew that it was more detrimental than what I was feeling. Like what I was feeling sucks, but sorry if you don't want me to say that.
No, I'm going to say it.
What I was feeling was not the best, but also there's not an option to walk away because that's not something that you do. You don't walk away.
Yeah, and I like getting that perspective because I got to a point where I didn't care about the options, but I also wasn't a Christian. And I have had conversations with people last year about my state, whether I was a Christian or not. I don't believe I was because I laid down what God had me to do, and in return, I picked up the world. And so when I was addressing my loneliness and the stages I was going through, I didn't care really what God had to say. From your perspective, it sounds like you had so many people in your life and everything that was like, we're going to force you. Like if you think you're going to give up, you think again, I'll be at your house. I'll be all these things. And I didn't surround myself, for one, with godly people. And I didn't care really what God thought. And it brought me to a point where the low was, I was just trying to be man enough to kill myself. And it didn't really care what God had to say. That night I had a real conversation with my dad and my daughter and stuff like that. And I could care less. And it's like the importance of having God in your life. People want to think of this crutch that God is, but in reality, it's such a power that you can say this life is bigger than myself, so it's not an option.
Yeah,
I can't do that. Going on to the kind of the next follow-up question to that would be, when they started to like tell you, hey, it's not really an option. When was the point from your low that you kind of were in this moment in your life where you're like, all right, I gotta dig myself. How am I going to do this? What tools am I going to use? Because there's people out there right now that are like, man, I'm lonely, and no, I don't want to kill myself like Ben. He's an idiot. But I don't know how to get out of this. Yeah. What would you say the very first step is?
So when I was in some of that season, literally our pastors, he said, you need to read the word for at least 2 hours a day. At that time, I was a stay-at-home mom. I really wasn't, I don't want to say not doing anything. Mm-hmm. Being a stay-at-home mom is a whole different world. But I didn't have anything outside of the home. And my kids were young because at that time we hadn't had Zeke. And so there's like a 5.5, almost 6-year gap between Serenity and Zeke. So at that time he was like, you need to read your word for at least 2 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, one, I don't like reading that much. So probably not. So I think I was a little bit rebellious at first until I could see the shift in those things, because there's something different about knowing the word. Like, I know the word. I grew up in church my whole life. I've heard all of the things. So I know that he's not going to leave me. I know that he's not going to forsake me. I know that he's my shepherd. I know that he's all of these things. But just letting it hit differently, even when you don't want it to. Was the thing. And then you find things in there, because reading for 2 hours a day, I didn't read the same thing over and over and over again. But how many times that his character is love, and that he cares for you, and that he takes all of those things, and it's our job to cast those things on him for him to take. And so learning that I was never walking it alone, even though I felt like I was walking it alone. In my everyday, my day to day, everything that I was doing. I don't know on my part, but everything that I was doing, he had a part in, if I allow him to. And so being a mom, to me, I struggled being a mom. I still kind of struggle being a mom. Our oldest is 15 now. We have a totally different relationship than I did when she was 5, which is not. We don't have a bad relationship. I don't think. You should have to ask her. I don't think. But I think being a mom was really hard for me, because there was so many things like that. As you become an adult, you learn things that you didn't know about your childhood. Like, my parents, again, had great parents, but like from my perspective, is like they didn't come to see my sports. They didn't come to see all of those things. So again, even my season of loneliness, I think I held some things against my parents that I didn't mean to or didn't realize. But then when I promised Mackenzie, I will never miss one of your basketball games. I will drive to the away games, and the one time I had to miss one of her basketball games, it wrecked me. Like, I was like, no, I promised that I would not miss it.
You're like, I will not be my parent.
But I was driving one day to one of her basketball games, and I called my mom. She was like, I am so glad that you get to do that. She said, we had to choose sometimes whether we were going to pay $5 to get into your game, or if we were going to have $5 to go to church. And I was like, wait, what? Wait. You learn things.
Perspective. But,
you learn things. And so, but anyway, so I think that was one of the things, even out of my block, because I think I was more like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to read that much. I don't like it enough. I don't like it enough for that. But he knew too that Trevor and I were going to walk through something, and that because they had walked through some things that we were walking through. So they knew that we were going to walk through those things, and that I was going to need to learn to cling to that. And so I think just learning that that's his characteristic, that he's always there. That he created us so that he could be there for us and to guide us through those things if we so choose. And I think that I can't hit that enough. If you so choose to allow him to be there, he's there. Well, he's there anyway. But if you so choose to see that he's there in all of those aspects, then you can find him as the comfort.
Amen. So if you are feeling alone, and you want a cheat sheet to get out of it, read your Bible a lot. 2 hours a day, because it'll change something inside of you, because it's a living word. When you talk about the season when you kind of walked out of it, and you actually felt some of the weight kind of give up, like things are changing, like there's actually hope at the end of this tunnel.
Yeah.
And what you did kind of maybe to sustain that.
Yeah. So I think that addressing some of the fact, like even what I just said about my parents, like I didn't know that I was harboring things towards my parents until sometimes it's like just a slap in the face. It's like, oh crap, I've been mad at you my whole life for not being at my games, but really it was not you. Which then, it teaches you, those things teach you different things. But so I think realizing that kind of where those things started stemming from, and how I let those things into my life, until I really dove into why I let those things into my life, or how the enemy had a hold in my life, because I dealt with rejection a ton, which just comes along with the loneliness, because you feel like you're rejected by everybody, or everybody has something against you, or because I still struggle. I think sometimes I did get set free from feeling rejected all the time, because like it would be even like to the stupidest little things. Well, why didn't they invite me to that little get together?
I didn't say hi to me in church.
Yeah. And really, especially now that I'm older, it's like everybody has a life.
Oh,
Like,
once you realize that, it's a lot more freeing of a life to live.
yeah, because it's like it's not that they're not thinking about you or that they don't care about you. It's just they've got things going on too. Why don't you say hi? Because maybe they're struggling with something and they've got their mind so set on something else. And so, anyway, so I think that learning that I was holding things against people that I didn't realize I was holding against them, that and diving to where the root of those things came from. I felt like my growing up with siblings is just super weird. I love all of my siblings today for sure. We all have a great relationship, but I think watching my parents parent each sibling differently kind of offended me, even though now that I know, because I'm a parent, you have to parent each sibling differently. Because they're different, who their callings and their gifts are different. But I think at that time I wanted life to be fair, and so like I picked up some of those things. Like so it made me feel some sort of way. Like I felt rejected because they did this for my sister Ashley, and they didn't do those things for me, and I followed all the rules, and they were all rebellious, and
I'm the rule follower.
Yeah, I've never done anything wrong. Like why, And so I think maybe I just thought, now that I'm processing some of it, I think that I just thought too highly of myself even, and so learning that I thought too highly of myself, that I wasn't being rejected, that not everybody was.
Yeah, it goes back to Mary and Martha, where you're doing everything. You're like, Jesus, what? I mean, you gonna tell her to help me? Like, you gonna,
No, and there's a place there. I mean, like Martha gets a bad rap, but there's a place for
we need workers
for that. But when that becomes your source of
check-based Christianity.
Yeah, it becomes works, and I was and still sometimes get caught up in that.
Checking off the list. I've read my well for 2 hours.
Yeah,
I read it. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes work-based, and then when somebody doesn't notice your work, then that's when you're like, oh, why did I put a lot of effort into this? Why are they not noticing it? Or when they mention somebody else that really didn't do much, and you're like, oh, hello, over here.
Yeah, we'll have to do another episode on, I guess, how would you title that? Unmet expectations.
Oh, yeah.
and you write out this big, I have this thing at work, and, we shoot these videos, and then you think this video looks so good, and then he's like, I'm going to use this other one. And it's just like,
it worked so hard.
And I thought about this. I thought about the angles of the shot. I thought about this, and it's like, I just don't like it. And you're like, all right, well, what's the point of me doing it? And then you start to get in that mindset of like, what? Then just do it yourself. And then it's just like, okay, well, now the enemy's in the.
Well, and that's, I think that's almost with everything. What you have to watch is where you open the door to the enemy, because he does not have the power unless you give him the power. And so you have to trace it back to, okay, where did I open the door? I opened the door somewhere. Somebody said something and I took it wrong, or maybe they meant it that way. It doesn't really matter, because that's one thing that I tell everybody. It really doesn't matter what anybody else does. It's always about your heart.
Amen.
And when you stand before the Lord, he's not going to say, Amber, can you believe that Ben talked to you that way?
Yeah.
You know,
get you a pass.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so, especially when we were doing youth ministry, that's what I use it on the kids all the time, and they get mad. But it's not about them and the Lord; it's about your heart and the Lord. And it is the hardest thing, especially as a mom, to walk through some of those things with your children. I'm so sorry that they hurt you in that way, but is your heart wrong in it?
Yeah.
And it's something that you need to check. And so I think it's very important. Our pastor says it all the time, dipstick yourself. You're always checking you, because it's always about your heart with the Lord. Now, he loves people and he wants you to reach people. 100% true. But if your heart's wrong, you're not doing, this is something, I don't know if I heard it from somebody else, but I don't want to say that I didn't hear it from somebody else, in case it did.
Yeah.
If I look at what the Lord says love is in the Bible, and if I'm not doing those things with you, if I'm not being patient with to you, then I'm not loving you well. If I'm not being kind to you, then I'm not loving you well. So if I'm not doing those things, I'm not doing it well. And so it's always, and I don't want to say it's always about me in a prideful way, because that's the 100% opposite of what I'm saying. It's always about your heart when you're giving to other people. Where is your heart? Is it in the wrong? You have to check yourself on that, because that when you start looking at other people and other people's wrong, that's when you start picking up the offenses. And that's when you start feeling some sort of way, whether that's lonely, angry, bitter, whatever. And those feelings start coming in. It's because you're looking at somebody else's wrong instead of saying, how could I have been better in that?
Most of the time when I was the most, I'm using the wrong words, but when I was the most lonely in my life, I felt justified in my sin.
Oh, yes.
I would always say, like, well, they got what they wanted, I'm gone. And it's like, hang on, that's not what they wanted, that's what the enemy wanted, but because you're justified in your own hurt. And I didn't realize this for the longest time, but I thought so many people hated me. And then you get back in those people's life, you meet them somewhere, you talk to them on the phone, or God drastically changes your life and stuff, and you realize, oh, those people were praying for me, they were fasting for me, they were doing all these things. But the thing with loneliness is that if the enemy can keep you hidden, he'll always win. And so when you try to fight the devil in the dark, you're going to lose. But so with loneliness, it doesn't matter kind of what, I mean, you want to talk about seasonal loneliness when you were addressing some of your stuff. That's heavy. That's not like, my friends don't like me.
Yeah.
That's a real life where it's like my life is crashing all around me. And the way it sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you dug yourself out of this was you surround yourself with godly people, whether forced or not.
Yeah.
You
most of the time it's more forced,
yeah.
I think. But
yeah, you opened up and you said, hey, this is kind of what I'm feeling. And you dove into the Word of God. And with all those three combined, it kind of just started slowly pulling you out of that.
Yeah.
And to the point where you're like, man, things may actually start being able to change. What was the final point where it's like, you don't struggle with this like you used to? Yeah, you have your moments, but it's not a everyday occurrence where you're like, I'm so alone. What was the breaking point, whether it's interaction with God, talk with somebody, that opened up all of that to you of like, I don't have to live like this?
Yeah, I think it's actually a little bit more recent, and by recent I mean
I feel like so yesterday.
It's been a few years, but I had this is when we had started doing some deliverance type stuff, and I was like, I don't know if I'm real sure about that kind of stuff, but I had sat in one with Tom and Michaela, and then I was like, I think I really do need to be delivered from some things. And that's actually kind of even more so when I found out there was things that I had let the enemy take root in my life, that rejection and stuff like that. And so it came to the point where it was like, yeah, I'm still dealing with this. I'm still upset when I don't get invited to things, and I'm still like over little things, like, and at that point I should have definitely not, been struggling with it. So, but yeah, I actually told them that I really felt like I needed to be delivered from some of those things. And actually during that time, I actually got delivered from anger and rejection. And so I think that was a big turning point in my life, and even in my motherhood journey and things like that, because everything that anybody did made me angry and feel like they hated me. But also on the other side, I am a people pleaser, so I try to make sure that everybody knows everything's done for everybody the way that they need it done, and I know every allergy of every person in our church, so that when I do have them over for dinner, that I can take care of that. And so I think that being able to just be set free from those things And to continue it is like, I stay with the Lord and say, hey, you know my heart on this. And then I also have a very good husband who can tell me, hey, your heart's not right. And then,
but still you have to be able to have
you have to, because there's always people that, I'm not going to say there are always people. You should always find yourself somebody that is strong in the Lord, whether that's a pastor, whether that's a friend you've been with that you know their relationship with the Lord. You have to have people that they will understand what you're going through and they will listen to what you're going through. But if you're wrong, they're not going to validate you.
Yeah, me and my dad, one of us talked about it, and we were talking about being a man of God, and it was, you have to have men in your life that aren't afraid to get hit.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to say the right things.
Yeah.
And I think it was Trevor. One of the things he brought up was you need to have a man that's not afraid to lose a relationship off of saying what you need to hear to keep your relationship with God. And for a mom, it's probably awesome to have women in your life that are being like, hey, no, this is what the Bible says, dealing with your husband and kids and all these
Well, it actually tells us that the older women are to train the younger women how to love their husbands and children. And so that's actually one of the reasons we started really doing our women's ministry and stuff in the church, is because that was what's on our heart, is because it instructs us to do those things. So I think it's very important to have, again, I'm going to say it, people that are strong in the Lord and strong in their relationship with the Lord, that know the Word of God and know the truth. Because I can have a friend that I can go and vent to, but are they throwing fuel on that fire to make it bigger and helping me have more rejection and more anger towards the person that I'm offended with? Or are they saying, I understand that you feel that way, and maybe they did mean it that way, but have you taken it to the Lord? Have you gone to them and talked to them about what they said to you to clarify? Because a lot of the things that we get upset about is miscommunication and misunderstanding.
Yeah, so-and-so said this and they didn't.
Yeah, and so have you talked to them? So having somebody in your life, whether that's a spouse, women, if you're married, I would say make sure your spouse, or if you're not married and you're going to get married, make sure your spouse is strong in the Lord. Too many times he said, well, that's not how you're supposed to feel. And I'm like, okay, but I do feel that way. And he's like, yes, but it's against the word. And so it may make me angry, but I'm so thankful that I have him to be like, hey, this is what the word says. And I can understand why you're feeling that way. It makes sense, but you're not justified in feeling that way. And being okay to understand that you're not right all the time. You're right. Your feelings are not. You can't be led by your emotions, because they're not going to lead you in the right way. The only thing that you can be led by is the truth, and that's the word, and knowing the word, standing on the word. And so having somebody that can speak truth and is willing to speak truth, because that, I think, is what you run into. I don't want to offend people. I still speak truth into people's lives, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I think I struggle more speaking into people's life because I don't want to offend people. But find those people that aren't gonna, they're not upset if they offend you, because if they offend you, it's your problem that they offend you. But because the Bible tells you not to pick up offense, or not to be offended. But so to find those people that are strong in the Lord, know the word of God, and are willing to speak into your life, but you have to be willing to also tell them, hey, I need you to speak into my life.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think a lot of times is we run to comfort over truth. I spoke about this last week about something, but it's because we actually don't have to address our flesh. We actually don't have to address what internally is going on inside of us. And so a lot of times, whether, we are feeling lonely or something like that, we would much rather run to somebody that can just cry with us and have a pity party, which I'm not saying crying's bad. But you kind of just, you want the validation of how you feel instead of the truth behind the Bible and actually aligning yourself up with it, because this will cut your flesh.
Yeah.
This is something that, you know, when I call my dad and he says, well, Ben, the scripture says, I'm like, ugh. And it's like, okay. And it's like, I wanted to hear that though. I called him because I knew
you were gonna hear
I knew
that.
I'm going to get hurt, but I know it's what I need to hear. And, but you know, if I need to call somebody and just kind of talk to them about, you know, about something that's happened with me emotionally, I know who to call. Like there's certain people, but they're all godly men,
Yeah.
and they're all men that are going to lead me to Christ and how to be better. So, with all that said, what is something you would tell the audience, whoever is watching, and they feel like they're in a lonely state and they don't know how to get out?
Yeah.
What's advice and a action plan that you would give them?
One, find somebody that is godly, that stands on the truth. If you're a female struggling with that, I would find a strong female in the Lord.
Female.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a male, then find a man of God that
Yeah.
that can lead you in the right way. So I think that would be the first step, is to find somebody that it's okay to be vulnerable with and say, hey, I'm really struggling here. And then kind of let them guide you in some of that, because that's what I needed at that time, because I didn't want, I didn't know what to do, I guess. I just knew I felt this way. So so I would definitely find somebody that is going to point you in the right direction, and then learn to stand on truth, because the enemy is going to whisper lots of lies. And you have to learn the truth. And whatever that looks like, you have to learn the truth. And that is the word. You have to learn the truth. You have to know it. And so there are a ton of scriptures that talk about him never leaving you, and who he is to you, that he's your shepherd and that he will lead you, that he will guide you. There's a ton of those scriptures in the word. Find the ones that resonate most with you. Commit them to memory, and if you are not good at memorizing things, write them down in a place that you can see every single day, and you quote it over yourself. This is the truth that I live by, and learn to live by truth in everything. Will you fail at it? Of course. Will the enemy still be faithful to come and try and to whisper lies? Absolutely, but you know how to combat it with the truth. So I would say, find somebody that is going to lead you in the truth, and learn the truth for yourself. Who you are, who he created you to be, what your role is, what your purpose is, and his character in taking care of who you are.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that will do it for the episode of how to deal with loneliness, or how to deal with when you're struggling with it. But thank you for doing this, and until next time.
All right.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.